There are like the red ones or links.
Oh, okay.
Uh, do
And
you have?
we're live, by the way. But okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
the it's all right. The red ones are links, and then the other ones aren't links because so the links go to what do the links go to?
The links basically go to videos, but I was gonna say maybe we should have a way to actually watch the videos because this is going to only show the chart.
Okay.
And if I hit this, it's not going to. I don't think it's going to go on the stream.
Oh, I see. Okay. If you figure out a way to make it go on the stream, you can. But otherwise, we can just talk about it. We can talk about our plans for it and how we'll judge it with or without data and that kind of thing. Um,
Yeah. So basically, the idea with this chart was, Carson and this other guy. I forgot his name.
Michael.
Michael. They made this ranking for animal right violations, and I thought it's a good idea, but I thought it could be executed much better with Excel. And I sort of put something together, but I didn't have enough time to finish it, sadly. And maybe we'll just explore what I've put together and how useful it is.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think Michael will be very interested in this and joining us at some point on putting it all together. Really quick before we get into that, I am curious to hear your thoughts because a lot of vegans think the idea of any focus on welfare not being good. Now this blows my mind. I think this is a thing where it's maybe just the loudest vegans on the internet because I'm guessing most vegans in real life, if you talk to them, they love the idea of focusing on welfare. But I just happened to come in contact with all the like 95% of people that talk to me about this, thinking that it's anti-vegan to care about welfare. So in your mind, if you were going to talk to people on the street, if you were going to set up a table to talk to people and you were going to talk about veganism and all this stuff, do you think there's a portion of time that makes sense that would be kind of a good thing for vegans to do to spend time with a welfare element like getting rid of battery cages for chickens if we thought there was a likelihood that we could get enough non-vegans on board to actually change legislation.
Um, so first of all, from my experience, most of my friends are actually opposed to the welfare movement, like vegan friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's kind of opposite to yours. I'm not. So in real life, I wouldn't advocate for such changes, personal changes for a person, because I think that there's pretty much always a way to advocate for veganism personally.
Gotcha.
But I think that this is important because, as you said, when it comes to changing laws, legislation, it's not that easy of a switch to just change, let's say, an entire country's laws. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a very disruptive thing because it's related to food, and people are, uh, as a mass, they're very touchy on this subject, and
Gotcha.
understandably so. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's it's ingrained deeply within it's an instinct. Food. It's a survival instinct, so it's a touchy subject.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's compare it to something really quick. I am always hesitant to bring in abortion to vegan talks, but I think one of the biggest problems is so many human issues are solved in most countries that it wouldn't make sense to compare it to something in the past. I mean, we could, but as far as laws go now, I think let's look at abortion. So well, are you comfortable stating your opinion on abortion?
So I've it's very difficult for me to have an opinion on abortion because when I listen to both sides, it's like both sides. It's a very polarizing topic. Both
Hmm.
sides are trying to argue from the for the safety of another being, where the pro-abortion ones are they're arguing for the rights of the woman, and the anti-abortion ones are arguing for the rights of the unborn baby.
Hmm.
And it's I I don't know. I don't have.
Well, if you could decide the law today, um, what would you decide? And you could even have it be factoring in that you're not even deciding what you think is best, but what you would want to offer the people that live in your country. Um,
I think you should be able to do abortion, but maybe there should be a threshold where you're not just um, willy nilly, killing unborn children, unborn babies. So
okay.
maybe some
Would you
kind
say anything before 20
of
weeks is fine?
anything before 20 weeks. It's so how much is 20 weeks in months? That's
So 20 weeks would be about 5 months. It's when people argue about like viability, if a baby was born early, the earliest it could survive outside the womb, it's thought of as around 24 weeks, but I think the earliest case was like 21 weeks. When people talk about consciousness, the first time that a fetus is likely conscious is between 20 and 24 weeks. So a lot of people that are pro-abortion or pro-choice would say about 20 weeks. But then there's others that say that you can terminate up until like the day of birth. So I just wanted to figure out, at what point do you think any before a certain range are acceptable? So would you say before consciousness and before, well, another stage would be, what a lot of, I don't know about a
I
lot
don't
of
know how you
vegans,
would
but
determine it though. Consciousness.
yeah, I'm not sure exactly how they determine it, but it's just what the current thought is. But I know there's a lot of vegans that are uh, a mixture of pro-life, pro-choice, that think as soon as sentience comes in, that's what matters, similar to their vegan stance, and that's thought of to be around 12 weeks. So you're sentient without a conscious experience at 12 weeks, but you get your conscious experience around 20 weeks. Um, well, I don't need to know exactly where you stand. I kind of just need to know if there's a certain period of time where you're completely accepting of abortions.
Yeah, there probably would be, and I'm not sure what
How
where
about
I
10
would
weeks?
stand if I knew enough about this topic. But
Yeah. Would you say that before sentience and before consciousness and before viability?
I would
So
say
10.
yeah.
Okay, so let's say 10 weeks. So 10 weeks. Let's say that you would think that anything before 10 weeks is fine. So you think up until 10 weeks is perfectly fine. Now, if in your society, or
But
in your,
let's just say, sorry, just a quick
you're fine.
hypothetical. Let's say it's over 10 weeks or over 20 weeks, but the woman was raped and she didn't know until this point for some reason.
Gotcha. I know people that think that even if it's after they're cut off, if it's rape, it should be acceptable. In my mind, it shouldn't. I am curious to hear your thoughts, but it won't affect the challenge I'm going to bring to you in a second.
Yeah,
But yeah, what is your thought? Do you think
I
the rape
think in that
changes it?
situation probably should be.
Okay, what about up until the birth? If they found, like, if somebody was rescued from a basement because they were kidnapped and raped, and they're a day away from giving birth, and they had no option to get an abortion before, but now doctors could go in and
Yeah, I would say yeah.
okay,
In this
interesting.
situation, yes.
Okay. Okay, but yeah, really quick to go back to how I want to compare the welfareism to the abortion thing is, so
Hmm.
let's say that you are of the opinion that anything from conception through 10 weeks, since there's no conscious experience, there's no sentience, that it is perfectly fine to get an abortion because you're essentially not killing anything. And so that, let's say that that's how you feel about abortion. And then with veganism, you want total liberation. You want abolishment, not
Yeah,
welfare. That's your ultimate stance.
yeah,
But let's say in your country, there's a lot of conversation going on, and um, and some people want their abortion to be completely illegal. So the second you're pregnant, you cannot get an abortion. And then let's say the other half of the people in your country want a 6 week law, because I think there's a 6 week what's called like a heartbeat law, where there's no consciousness, there's no sentience, but it's where the heart starts forming. It's like 6 or 8 weeks. Um, the way I look at welfareism with animal rights and with veganism is like, if I was you, if I wanted 10 weeks to be perfectly legal for an abortion, but in my country, half the people wanted abortion completely illegal, and the other half wanted abortions to be acceptable up to 6 weeks. I would spend a lot of my time and conversations and petitioning and spreading information on focusing on this 6 week thing. I wouldn't tell people. I wouldn't ignore this opportunity to get people this opportunity to be able to have abortions up to 6 weeks. I would personally want 10 weeks, but if 6 weeks was an option, I would want that to be widely talked about. And so I personally want factory farming gone. But if I knew it was widely talked about that we could end battery cages for chickens, I would take a bit of a break from talking about wanting total abolition, and I would get all these non-vegans who normally would be against every stance I would have about veganism, but would be on board with getting rid of battery cages. I would have that be a focus of conversation. Does that make sense? The comparison with the abortion?
um, yeah. I think in both cases, I would advocate personal advocacy for the 10 weeks, and again for abolition, because when it comes to
Mm.
changing the law, if you have conversations that are, advocating for, let's say, abolition, then just getting rid of the battery cages, I think, is going to be seen as less of an extreme, as less of a hindrance,
Hmm.
if that person has had a prior conversation where they've been trying to duke it out with me to talk about to talk for animal agriculture, where I'm talking, for abolition, instead of me talking for just ending cages.
Gotcha.
Does
I
that
see.
make sense? So there's this psychological concept of, it's called the Overton window.
Hmm.
Do you know it?
Yeah.
It's basically, um, there's the way you make decisions, you make them by approximating things. And
Hmm.
if you've had, let's say, discussions um, with somebody on a far extreme, or if you see them as somebody on a far extreme, you're going to see something that is less extreme than this, but you would have, prior to this discussion. Oh God, I just
Yeah.
mangled my
Well, you're
words.
fine.
Yeah, you would, like, it would shift um your tolerance for this would shift just from this discussion. And
Hmm.
the less extreme thing, you would see that as a sort of a fresh breath of air, I guess. and
Yeah.
and the yeah, and
Yeah.
I think
Wait,
it's
wait.
gonna be a better chance for accepting
Well, let
it.
me let me throw out another example. So let's say that okay, so the main stances on abortion would be no abortion at all, um, a viability consciousness stance of somewhere around 20 weeks, or all abortions acceptable. So I guess more of what my point is, if somebody thinks all of abortions are acceptable, like even the day before birth, let's just say a woman just decides, you know what, I don't want this baby. I have no reason for not wanting this baby, but I just don't want it to exist. So I want a doctor to go in, kill this baby that's 1 day away from being born, and then pull its body out, and then it's dead. I get this choice because it's in my body. I know many people that think this stance, but what I think, if there was a debate going on to try to figure out where things were going to land, and the options were no abortion at all, viability, or this other extreme, if they go have a conversation with somebody and try to convince somebody to be on board for their ultimate stance, kind of like the ultimate abolition stance for veganism, that individual that they could get through to, if they just say, well, because it's her body and her choice and it's in there, she should be able to kill it day of. Um, that person's not going to walk away with any new information. They're going to walk away thinking the person's a wackadoodle. But if the person knows that there's good arguments that could convince somebody of the viability consciousness argument, then I feel like I don't think the person should lie. I don't think the person should say, "Oh, I think it should be here," but setting your ideas aside that are extreme, I think, are important. If I go to talk to somebody about veganism, I'm not going to tell them that I think it should be illegal to own cats and dogs and that we should have no contact with them. That's an opinion I hold, and I'm not going to lie about it if I was asked about it. But I'm not. It's not a focus of mine. So I would focus on the more important ideas of not eating meat, dairy, and eggs. And so if somebody felt that it's okay to terminate a baby the day before birth, depending on the culture and how whatever the current fighting for legislation is, it might be more beneficial for human rights, in this case with abortion, for human rights to convince people to let a woman get an abortion up until viability instead of telling people a scary thing. And so I think in the same sense that I wouldn't want to scare people away by talking about pets and I could just talk about veganism overall, in some cases, it might even be better to go even further and not scare people away with abolition veganism, and to know that that's the right person to focus on ending the branding of cows or battery cages.
Um, yeah, I think that there's a wide enough spectrum of people where they have different opinions on the spectrum of pretty much every topic.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have an opinion that's seen as extreme, and that's what I advocate for, there
Mm-hmm.
would be another person that would have an opinion that's seen as less extreme, and they would advocate for that. And even though I personally maybe not won't be able to convince every single person of my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
maybe just their knowledge of the existence of me is going to make it more likely for them to accept the less extreme opinion. So I'd say I would personally still advocate for what I think, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
also not going to be against anybody who has, let's say, welfare opinions, or if I
Mm-hmm.
was of the opinion that a woman should have an abortion uh, the day before she gives birth, then I won't be against somebody who would have an opinion that she should have an abortion 6 weeks after conception. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, okay. So one last question before we hop into the chart: Is there Are there any topics within veganism, kind of like the one I said, where I don't, if I talk to somebody about veganism, I don't bring up pets if it's the first time talking to them? Is there any element of veganism, like the pets thing, that if you're talking to a random stranger or somebody that's just up for talking to you about veganism, is there anything that you omit that you just don't bring up like that?
Predator culling. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah.
not sure. Yeah, pets. I think I might speak to people about pets, but I haven't.
Hmm.
I think that currently it should be illegal to have ownership of pets, but not to breed and sell them, just because there are so
Mm.
many homeless animals, and maybe it's better for them to be uh, in human ownership.
Yeah, yeah.
Than being
No,
used.
yeah, and I agree. And I think there's a reason why even anybody that's against breeding and selling, even though they wouldn't lie about that, I think there's a reason why when you see talks with like Ed Winters and Joey Carbstrong on the street, they're specifically talking about the diet aspect of it,
Yeah.
because they want to make it as uncomplicated as possible. So I guess that's kind of my point. So you might leave out predator culling or breeding and selling. I might leave out my thoughts on the entire ownership of animals. I guess I'm just trying to point out that humans have endless amounts of things that they're for and against. And I guess I don't need to convince everybody that they should fight for welfarist ideas, but I'm very bothered by this movement that seems to be happening of vegans thinking that if you focus on welfare, you're not a vegan. And I think we all focus on aspects that matter most to us. There's probably a lot of things that we think we would want to fight for, a lot of things with animals and with human rights and whatnot. But when we talk to people, we're going to pick and choose which things we talk about. And in my mind, and why I like to have conversations like this, I almost think that there should be a shift to the majority being these welfarist ideas, because I think every added law that's a good law, I think, is good, and I think it goes in progress of working towards the better overall situation. Once an element's out of the way, then you know that's out of the way. If this list you have here, if we had a list, let's say we knew the list would be 1,000 things, and also the overall is ending everything. Every one of those, if we ended 900 of those 1,000, then those would be 900 things we don't have to worry about. Those wrong rights violation actions are illegal. We got them passed. We can focus on the other 100 plus the idea of total abolition. And if the idea of not focusing on the 1,000 rights violations would have to be comparable to allowing more rights violations to come in. Like right now, I don't know if it's illegal to have sexual acts with animals, like sheep. But let's say
Yeah.
that it's illegal. Let's say it's illegal. Then that would mean vegans would have to be accepting of making it become legal, because you want the overall abolition. But aside from the overall abolition, if you don't care about the individual cases, then it's not just that you don't care about the individual cases that currently exist. It's that you don't care about the ones that could exist, like the cutting off of cow legs to make space to have more cows, adding in the idea of being able to have sex with sheep. Maybe you can rent out your sheep. You can just have people can show up and pay you to have sex with your sheep. If you are not going to fight for every single individual rights violation, then you're kind of accepting every possible one to come that hasn't come. And so maybe it's just a thing that the majority of vegans haven't thought through. I wouldn't have thought this element a couple months ago because I just hadn't happened to have thought about it. But now that I've thought about it, I can't unthink about it. They have to be equal. They have to be they. I have to be able to say I'm okay with it being legal to have sex with sheep if I'm going to say abolition or nothing.
Well, I guess that's gonna be abolition or nothing that hasn't until this point been a thing.
But somebody
Not
could have
sure.
said that.
But,
Somebody could have said that 100 years ago, and then there would be things that weren't legal that became legal. Factory farms are constantly creating new laws about how you can't go and film inside their factory. I
yeah,
think you should be able to. And so that law matters. It's not animal abolition or nothing. It's animal abolition, but also I think we should be able to film in a factory farm. And also, I think we should not cut off tails. We should not this, that, or the other. Um, like right now,
Yeah,
if we could make
when
a
it comes
law. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, when it comes to law, I think we mostly agree. Is just that I don't think uh, we should be. I mean, we should be advocating to people for, let's say, reduced tyrannism or anything like that.
Here's my concern with that though. Let's say I was on the street and there was 1,000 people on the street, and I could talk to all 1,000 about veganism, and maybe let's say I could convince 20 of that 1,000 to go vegan. That's good. 20 people going vegan is great. Some of them will turn people vegan. That's awesome. But what if I could convince 950 of those 1,000 to be against branding cows? Then even though I want overall abolition, and even though there might be a better overall outcome of 20 people turning vegan than 950 being against the branding of cows, if I could realistically get this large amount of people to be against this thing, and therefore they go off and talk to other people about this thing, and then a law goes in place where a cow is never branded again, and it's illegal to brand. Um, I don't know what this tells us about the overall future of abolition of animal harm, but what I can tell you is that it seems very, very possibly right that it would be worth not talking to any of them about veganism and sitting down, having a table that says, let's talk about branding. And everybody that sits down going, yeah, they can watch a video and they'll go, it's a person that would say, I'll never be vegan ever and I love eating meat. You show them a video of branding and say, hey, we just want to make it illegal to brand. All these non vegan people that eat cows will say, well, yeah, I don't want to hurt them. And they could fight to change that. And then hopefully that triggers something in their head. And after they fight for 10 different things like branding and horn docking and all these things, they eventually wake up and go, okay, I want to be vegan. But I think we have to go with what we have surrounding us and work towards progress instead of seeming crazy to everyone.
Uh, so it's just that I don't think that advocating for, let's say, not branding cows is gonna be the disparity of efficiency between this and advocating for veganism is not going to be that great, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
like 20 people to out of 1,000 to 950 out of 1,000. uh, I think it's going to be much smaller. And the other thing is, I don't think that somebody that's just opposed to branding is going to be as likely to advocate or fight for stopping branding than a vegan. So if
Yeah.
we decide that this is the thing that we want to stop now, I think that people that have been convinced to be against branding but don't really change anything in their lives, they're not going to be as likely to fight for it than vegans. So I
Mhm.
still think that this is going to yield a better outcome in general.
Yeah. No, and you might be right, which is why I think this type of conversation is important, and trying to use whatever we can to figure out why one thing might be better than another. I am perfectly willing to admit that 20 people turning vegan might be better for animals than 950 people being against branding. It's going to depend on a lot of different things, and it's going to involve a lot of research and different ideas. But I know there are a lot of cases where people that eat animals are supportive of animal rights. There's a thing where in Australia there's a bunch of fires, and pictures of like koala
Yeah.
bears burning made people donate a bunch of money. And a lot of people start caring about things like SeaWorld. There's big movements to end SeaWorld because of these orcas in captivity. Their fins flop over. And I.
Another cages,
Mhm.
empty cages,
Mhm.
fur.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so I think these things are good. So in a country where that is wrong is legal, then the idea of making it illegal is good. But depending on how bad of a thing it is, it might not be worth our focus. If being branded only hurts for a second and a cow doesn't care about its looks, so it doesn't care
probably
about this
not though.
permanent thing, then maybe it's not a largely important thing to put focus on. But discussing these things, which most vegans I talk to aren't even willing to discuss this list that we have here.
Yeah,
Discussing these things is important to start changing how we view things. If something as simple as branding is legal, then it's not legal to brand your child. So if it was legal to brand your child, but it wasn't legal to like kill or something else, um, then we would want to add that extra law in. We'd go, it's wrong to brand children, so let's make it illegal to brand them. If a parent wanted their 10-year-old to get a tattoo, I think it would be good to have it be illegal to let them get a tattoo because they're not old enough to decide for themselves. Um, and so each added thing is good.
yeah. So I also saw that you in your last stream about this, you talked about many variables when it comes to deciding these things, and that's basically what I'm trying to achieve with this list.
Yeah.
It's so that we can put a number on each variable, so we can concentrate on each variable, and
Hmm.
then have it be calculated based on some kind of formula that we can decide on. Like,
Yeah.
no, sorry, what I've done here
Okay.
with these. So maybe I should explain now.
Yeah, definitely.
So here I have basically the list with the violations, and things that we should probably fight against individually when it comes to law. Then I have a list of people, and we're going to give different scores um, on different variables
Hmm.
to decide whether or not we should fight for them. So this is the first one is the necessity for the animal within the industry. So let's say it's with branding, it's not necessary for the animal,
Hmm.
but let's just say with debeaking, there's some kind of it's so that they don't peck each other, and so there's
Hmm.
some kind of a protection towards the animal, so it's probably gonna get a higher score.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then we have the public perception, and this is basically to vote uh, how well the public will uh, perceive the ending of this. And this is from minus 100 to plus 100,
Hmm.
and so it's gonna be neutral. The public doesn't care. Plus 100. Actually, I'm not sure how I set it up. I don't know why my Excel
Now,
is lagging.
for the public perception, are we going to factor in their perception of the outcome? So if doing any of these things makes the cost of their animal products higher, are we factoring that in, or are we just choosing their perception of the actual abuses?
I think we should factor that in. Like, it's
Um, c- uh,
something might be very very high on cruelty. We're gonna vote how high it is on the cruelty,
mhm.
but uh, if it costs a lot, it's a different variable. I
Yeah,
see.
I'm not sure how exactly we would factor in. Like, so if we did away with branding, I'm not sure how much that would change the cost of the products, of the meat products, versus if we did away with debeaking.
Yeah, I also don't know, but it's kind of a double edged sword because the things that are going to cost more for the consumer, they're probably going to be the best things to implement because they're going to be the hardest hit for the industry. But
Yeah.
they're also going to be shifting their opinion towards the, I don't want this law.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
So yeah, it's not gonna be super easy. Then capacity for suffering, the sentience of the animal. This is yeah, I've made it so we can have. Oops, I'm not sure what I did here. My Excel is lagging,
Hmm.
which is super weird. It's yeah, it crashed. Uh,
Okay, so let's take one of these and let's try it out. Oh well, if it crashed, then I guess we cannot. But if
yeah, uh, I think it's because I'm trying to stream it. It shouldn't. I got a pretty good laptop.
yeah,
Um,
I wonder if you close out and go back in.
I'm trying to, but it's very
Yeah.
crashed.
No, it's all right.
Hmm. Yep. I'll try to. Oh, yeah. I hope I'm not. I don't lose any info. I can't do anything.
Gotcha. Um, yeah. Well, if you can get it to open again, we could give it a shot. But if not, we can just talk about some of these ideas. Um,
Yeah. Okay. we can talk about them while I'm trying to
yeah.
close it. Actually.
Yeah, you're fine. So I guess I'm trying to imagine. So a lot of people will say that if us vegans advocate for total abolition, then that will make other people give us little bits, like politicians and whatnot. Will be like, okay, well, I can't give you this, but I'll give you little bits. I don't think I just don't think that's necessarily accurate. Like, if we don't specifically fight for, if nobody fights for a specific thing, if nobody brings up their concern with a specific thing, then I don't think politicians are necessarily going to want to give us that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When
what
it
are your
comes
thoughts
to
on that?
lobbying, that's true.
Yeah,
If
so.
you're advocating to politicians,
Mhm.
that's not gonna happen. I mean, it's not just you convincing the politician; it's also the enormous social pressure that this politician is under when
Mhm.
making these decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, so imagine if if online, like if on Facebook and Twitter and all these different things, there was some big push where all people like some videos were going viral about branding, and then everybody was just like saddened by it, and they still eat meat but they're against this branding. I imagine there being a thing where politicians want to be elected. They want the people that they think would elect them to like as many things as possible about them. Now, hopefully, they're not going to lie. They can just get persuaded to add something to their list of things they want. Um, but I feel like normalizing something becoming a big talking point would be good. It's something vegans should want. Um, again, I don't know how much time needs to be put into this. I don't know if when you do a table talk and you do like an Earthling Ed type thing, if that should always be veganism, but then online it's slightly different. But I feel like if everybody started talking about branding, then the vegans would get on there and be like, "You're against branding, but you still eat animals." And it's something that I think maybe we should just be more cautious about is not attacking people that are doing a right thing, and maybe we should always have a focus of nicely talking to them about why maybe they should do something else as well. So when people care about like rhinos or lions going extinct because of poachers, instead of vegans saying, why do you care about these lions and rhinos, but you don't care about cows and chickens? I think maybe there should just be a better approach to how we talk to them. Well, what do you think?
Um, yeah, we can. So when you said, well, if somebody is for something good and you tell them something like, "Oh, you're against poaching, but you're not vegan," then yeah, I would say that's not a good thing.
Okay.
But obviously, we should always be keeping in mind to that goal, I guess. So
Yeah.
I acknowledge the. I'm okay with the existence of people that are against, let's say, cages, but are not vegan
Mhm.
and would fight for stopping cages. But I would definitely try to advocate for veganism to these people. It's
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
no,
No.
it's definitely there are. I guess there would be times in which it would be better to advocate for a single issue, and that would be if sort of the what's coming to mind is like strike while the steel's hot. You
Mm,
know,
mhm.
you gotta concentrate while there's like a petition. If you're
Mhm.
trying to get people to sign a petition, trying to again lobby for something,
Mhm.
but not in to I guess it's not that productive to advocate it too far in advance in time to
Mm,
people. Is just that when activists come up, decide that this, this can be stopped and it should be,
mhm.
and they're fighting for it, then I guess we can do it as showing them support,
Yeah.
but
No.
not permanently advocating for single issues in hopes that someday this issue will be brought up
Mm,
and more people will be for the for a law um, that stops this action.
mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't
Well,
think.
I imagine something like. So I haven't watched it yet, but Joey Harpstrong talked to Tristan Tate. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I watched it. I waited for it quite a bit.
Okay, yeah, I do. I need to watch it. But I imagine he didn't talk about any welfarist ideas. But I could imagine that Tristan Tate, who I've seen a few clips of him talking about just not caring about animals, if Joey said something like, would you vote to make it to where cows can't be branded or something? If you just took a horrible, despicable act, um, I could imagine somebody like him saying, "Yeah, like I don't, I want to be able to eat meat still, but I don't want them to be branded." And
So
to get that win of him saying that, and then everybody he that's listening to him to think about it and go, "Okay, yeah, I'd feel that way" or whatever, and then to say, well, then why don't we fight for it? Why don't we talk about it? And to get like what did like 75,000 people watch that? All the Tristan fans probably got nothing vegan out of it. All the vegan fans didn't go not vegan to go on Tristan's side about it. Um, I just think that there's cases where um, maybe focusing on veganism isn't the right answer. Maybe we need to focus on the individual cases.
So, by the way, he brought I think, a few hypotheticals. There were something like, well, if you could uh, have a farmer sort of reduce some kind of unnecessary suffering, would you be in favor of that?
Oh,
And
okay.
Tristan was something like, I think if it's for food, anything is justifiable. Even if you're angry and you decide to like punch the animals or
Oh
abuse them,
wow.
that's fine.
Okay,
So,
so
so
maybe
I don't
maybe
think
it wouldn't
I
have
don't think
helped
it
with
will
Tristan.
work, dude.
Fair enough. Maybe it wouldn't have with him. I don't. I think most humans though they don't have the time to focus on boycotts when it comes to fighting for animal rights to not be harmed. But they'd be willing to talk about it and they'd be willing to let it become a viral known topic. And yeah, I guess it would just be interesting to see if like I'm sure somebody like Earthling Ed could create a campaign where he gets an insane amount of non-vegans all over the world to focus on talking about a topic. And I don't know the right approach. I don't know exactly how it would or should go, but it's
Mm,
something.
yeah, I think a lot of people have enough time for boycotting something. Just I feel like people think that it's more difficult. It seems more difficult than it actually is. Like the
Fighting for something, or you mean going
no, no,
vegan?
the food aspect.
Oh yeah. I don't know. No, it depends on the person, I think, because I'm a perfect case of a person that was very addicted to unhealthy foods and specifically to animal products. I just talked to somebody a couple days ago about how about 20 years ago is when I first went vegan. I was
Yeah, but that's not time. That's personal desire.
yeah, but I think I don't know if when it comes to food addictions, if it's true addictions or whatnot. But the idea of I I I so badly did not want to harm animals that I decided to go vegan. I was vegan for 20 or not 20, sorry. About 20 years ago I went vegan for about a year and a half. And then at some point I just had this crazy craving and I decided to eat meat again. And I thought it was wrong. I did it for like a week or two, and then I went vegan again, and then I fell off the wagon again. And now I've been vegan for about 8 years, but off and on for the 12 years leading up to this current 8 years, I had the moral stance to not do it. But I just like I had strong crazy addiction where because I wish it didn't exist. I wish it was far away from me. And I know people right now. I have a neighbor that actually thinks the morally right thing to do is to be vegan, and he wishes that the law would make it illegal to eat animals, and he wished that he never had to have animal products near him. But since that's not the case, when he sees it at the store, he wants it, he buys it, and he consumes it. And I really think that that's kind of the problem is the addiction. I think people want it, especially people that don't care about their health. If they're addicted to certain things that taste a certain way, that addiction might overpower their moral systems. And I think the reason we have vegans is because the vegans that are staying vegan, their empathy overpowers their addiction.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess so, but yeah, still, I think that we should be trying to find better ways to advocate for veganism, and I
Hmm.
think we are. I mean,
Yeah.
we're getting better and better.
Yeah. Well, especially the more alternatives there are that are just as good, creating like fake furs and fake leathers. You
Yeah,
can find anything. Some of the top makeup brands are vegan now, not tested on animals. Impossible and Beyond Meats
yeah,
are
they
doing
just
it.
make it easier for
Yeah.
other people.
And I think lab grown meat will be probably the top thing that does it. Once that comes in and it's done well, and all the fast food restaurants start using lab grown meat, and everybody just hops on board, I think that'll change everything. It'll change the world.
I
Um,
hope so.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Me
don't
too.
think so, but I hope so.
Yeah, yeah. It's tricky. It's hard to know, but I really think food addiction is a thing that's not talked about much, and it's because you have two things happening
By the way,
where
wait, can I just interrupt for a
yeah,
second?
go for it. Yeah.
I think that it's quite important for us to stop calling it lab grown meat by now, from now, because first of all, lab grown has this negative connotation to it,
Yeah.
and it's not gonna be accurate when it's out of the lab because it's gonna be in a different facility. It's gonna be in a factory. So
Oh,
maybe we should
interesting.
call it cultured meat instead.
Okay, cultured meat. Yeah,
And
that's a good
that
call.
should be a little more normalized than lab grown meat because people have this fear of things that come out of a lab.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, that's a great point. I guess as a vegan, I use the term because I'm not thinking about it from that angle. But I think you're right, and cultured meat might be a perfect route to go. There might be some other options, and I think that's worth coming up with the best ways to word it. Um, but yeah, really quick with the food addiction thing. So I think at different times there's different movements that are happening, and there's a movement that's been happening for, I don't know in your country if this is talked about much, but I'm guessing it's all over the world. But the what's called like the acceptance is at every size or fat acceptance or whatever in the past like
Yeah,
20 years, there's been this huge push of anybody at any size is beautiful. Nobody knows how healthy you are by your weight and all this kind of stuff. There's a
yeah, there
slight
hasn't
benefit
been
to
a
it, but
huge push here. Is just I know it, in the U.S.
just seeing it on the internet. Yeah. And so I think a mixture of that being popular and then also veganism being popular amongst vegans anyways. And there's a lot of crossover in the type of people that would be fat acceptance and also vegan. There's not usually a talk about like food addiction. It's usually just like if you eat meat, you're a bad person. Not like I see the question all the time on social media. Somebody will say like, "How can somebody still eat meat?" And my response is, "Oh, they're probably doing it because they're addicted to it." And I know this because I did it even when I thought it was wrong. And I think if we talked about health and food addiction more, maybe separately from veganism, but just in the world, then we would figure out better answers for this. Because separate from veganism, in the US, anyways, over 80% of the US is obese, overweight or obese. And nobody
Over
wa-
80% is obese or
Over
overweight.
80% is overweight or obese. So I think it's like I think it's about like 40% overweight and then 40% obese.
Jeez.
Yeah, no, it's pretty bad in the U.S. But here's the thing: practically, literally, nobody wants to be overweight or obese. There are some people that are like internet presence that will claim they want to, but for the most part, anybody that could press a button and have themselves just be a healthy, fit shape would do it. And so the
Yeah.
fact that not only would they do it, they would desire it more than almost anything on earth. I think there have been some studies where people will even say if they could be the size and shape they wanted, they would sacrifice a limb or they would be willing to go blind or something. That's how much people desire being perceived as attractive or a healthy weight. And so the
What
fact that
what
this
percentage of people would want these things to lose a limb or go
right?
blind?
I can't remember the exact numbers, but I read
That
this
is,
study, and
I
it's
wouldn't for sure.
yeah. Oh no, me either. But my point is that for most people, it's one of the most desired things by them. Now, for me, one of the most desired things would be to be able to have the control to be healthy, and it so happens that I would that would make me at a good weight, and it's nice to be thought of as attractive by people. But I would hope that I could get to the level where I can choose to be healthy instead of choosing the thing that tastes good. But for most people, the one of the most important things to them would be to be at a healthy weight when they are not. And food addiction or the dopamine levels that happen because of what certain cookies and cakes and chips and pizza and all these things taste like, that makes you feel so good that you would sacrifice the most important thing to you. People would pay endless money to be perfectly thin, and they try with diet pills and all this
The
stuff.
most rationally
But
important.
what's that?
The most rationally important thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they can rationalize it. Okay, it's the most important thing for me to be
Hmm.
healthy, but
Yeah, well, and the fact that it would be that doing this action of eating healthfully would give them what they want, they still don't even do it for the thing they want the most. This shows you how addictive the food we consume is. And so I think the same thing definitely goes for something like animals, where if in your culture it is perfectly normal and acceptable to eat certain animals like cows and chickens and all these things, and if you can't even sacrifice certain foods to get exactly what you want more than anything on earth, which is to look good, then there's no way that people that aren't that they're used to being able to eat chicken and beef and all these things, they're of course going to go, oh, they're going to justify it with various different reasons. But the reason they're not doing it is because their empathy isn't at a high enough level to outweigh their desire for that taste. And that's the only reason why the cultured meat will be what does it, is because people that care more about taste than health, they if they can get that taste and not harm things, they will instantly switch over, eat the cultured meat, and say, "I can't believe I ever did it." They'll look back and say, "I regret ever doing it."
but when you say that you think that they're not doing it because their empathy isn't strong enough, do you mean
Mhm.
that their empathy isn't triggered with a strong enough stimulus to go vegan, but they have the capacity to uh, feel this empathy that would make them go vegan, or they just don't have the capacity? They just don't
Yeah,
have the empathy internally.
I think it comes down to what we're born with. I think the people that are currently vegan right now, that especially the ones that were addicted to meat products, I think they were born with empathy levels so high that it makes them be willing to sacrifice something. Now, I think there's a lot of people that they care way more about their addiction to meat than their levels of empathy are. But those same people, if they saw somebody kicking a dog on the street, they would say, "Not cool. Don't do
Mhm.
that," because they have high enough empathy levels to not want a random dog killed. But since they grew up in a society where it's acceptable to eat cows and chickens and stuff, then because they love that taste, they're okay with letting a normalized thing happen. But those same people, if 80% of the people in their society switched over to cultured meat, and were all of a sudden vegan, they would say what might overpower their addiction, not empathy alone, but not wanting to be perceived as a bad person. If all of a sudden the majority in their society didn't normalize it, didn't find it acceptable, then they'd go, "I have enough empathy and I have enough want to not be judged by my peers that now I will stop consuming this thing that's addictive to me." So different people have different levels of the amount of things and the type of things that I think will make them make that change. Um, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that your perception of people's education on this topic and their empathy might be subject to a bias,
Hmm.
some kind of a selection bias, because where do you meet non-vegans usually? Do you have like a social circle, or are you talking about non-vegans on the internet? Because the internet is very selective. So if a non-vegan
Hmm.
is, let's say, talking smack to vegans, then he's going to be sort of on these pages. He's going to be promoted this content. This content is going to be promoted to him as well. And
Mm.
if you're in social circles, then uh, I guess there's a. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I guess what I
There
mean is,
might be
so
a
if I
bias.
came,
The thing is, when I talk to people on the street, I feel like most people are just they know what a vegan is, but they haven't like truly engaged in this topic
Hmm.
at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I have somebody that I haven't met in real life, but I've talked to on podcasts a few times. His name's Chris. Very nice guy, and he actually lives near me in the same state that I'm in. But he's not vegan, and we had a conversation, and he said that morally he wants to be vegan. He would love to be vegan, but he's just so used to eating meat, and he likes the taste of it. And we watched Dominion together. We did a live stream where we watched Dominion. He saw the horrible practices. He wants those practices to be illegal, and he doesn't think people should eat meat, but he's kind of just addicted to it or whatever. It's very rare to find people that have this stance like the one I'm talking about.
Kind of like Ben
But
Shapiro.
what's that?
Kind of like Ben Shapiro.
Oh,
Because
maybe
I,
I'm.
yeah, I know I'm a moral hypocrite for this, but
Yeah. But
yeah,
I think it's important to recognize that these people exist, and that it might be the majority of people that most just don't think about it or talk about it. But just as far as like so this is a person on the internet, but it's not just a random like you're talking about with people on the internet. This is a real human that lives near me that is a nice guy that I've talked to a handful of times.
I
And
was talking about people on the street though.
what's that?
I was talking about people on the street.
I guess I just view this person as an example because
Oh,
most people don't just talk to random people on the street about things like this, about veganism, unless you set up like a street talk where you have a table and then whoever's sitting down and willing to sit down after seeing the sign is probably somewhat like a person that you might come across on the internet. But I guess I'm just pointing out that like so this person feels like because the majority in where he lives eat meat that he doesn't feel judged for eating meat, and because he's had it before and he loves how he feels the addiction, then he enjoys consuming it, and so I don't know what it takes to convince each person to actively give up this thing that they don't legally have to give up. I can't remember exactly where I was going with it, but yeah, I guess that's just my thoughts on the person on the street. Although this isn't a person on the street, I just view them kind of like a person on the street.
hmm. I mean, it's. I guess it's gonna be two things. It, you have to make it as the perception of it has to be as easy as possible,
Hmm.
as low of a barrier as possible, and then you have to they have to have a strong enough incentive. So that'll be
Hmm.
the animal rights and maybe. So I'm not. I haven't really thought about this a lot, but I don't think I'm against talking about topics like environmentalism or health if the person is interested. So, and my reason for this is that it's if you convince them of other things as well, it might shift their mind to the point where they can actually go vegan. But if you don't have enough time, it might not be worthwhile. So I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm not sure either. Well, with this person I'm talking about, I ended up talking him into doing like a meatless Wednesday thing. So he, or specifically vegan, he ate only vegan on 2 Wednesdays in a row before a talk that we had, and then we were talking about it, and he was telling me like what he made and what I think he had some hummus dish and some different things, and I think people like this are a perfect example of why maybe talking about reducing is good. Because somebody that's willing to admit it's morally wrong to harm animals, to eat them, and that they wish they didn't do it, they wished it was illegal, but they can't help themselves, they're probably the ultimate person to convince to reduce, because it's either they tell you that answer and then you go along your way and they're going to go eat all the meat in the world and you're going to go on continuing to be vegan, or you tell them, well, like, I can't force you to feel like this is easy to do. But what if you convinced yourself to be vegan for breakfast every day, and then you eat meat later on? I think cutting every little bit of cutting back helps. And people like this might be the right people to at least have them start with that, and then you could keep in touch with them. You could keep their phone number. You could have it be a person you meet up with all the time, and then eventually, after enough nice conversations with them, they might switch over. Eventually, after them thinking about it, when they're constantly are having to think about what they're consuming for breakfast, that it might click in. It might take a year, it might take a month, it might take 5 years. um, but do you think that's a good type of person to talk about reducing to?
I think it would be a good type of person to talk about this if this person is maybe in your social circle already, or you're planning to have this person in your social circle, or maybe if they have like a vegan friend that would encourage them in this way. Because if you just meet them once and you talk to them about this, they might do it for like a few weeks and then fall off.
Yeah. Even then, I agree with you that the best people to talk to about it would be people in your social circle or somebody you plan on keeping in touch with. But even if they're not, I don't think you should start off with the reducing conversation. But if I had a table talk and it had some thing about let's talk about veganism, and a random stranger sat down and I had a conversation with them, and we have a 30-minute conversation, and basically, what it boils down to is what I just described to you: somebody that thinks it's wrong to eat animals, but they do it because they were raised that way. They don't see themselves ending at any point, but someday they wish they could be vegan. I would say, even if you're never going to come into contact with them again, if you've basically gone over every aspect you can without feeding a fed horse of talking to them about veganism, if you could
Like
either end
you've
the
went over alternatives, you've went over tactics to, cope with addiction and stuff like that.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, once you've gone over essentially everything, like a short version of everything. Obviously, people could talk for days and days and years about veganism, but in a conversation, if you've basically got to the point where any further conversation about veganism isn't going to be helpful, my question is, would it be better to go, okay, that was a great conversation, end it there, and then they go home knowing your stance? Or would it be better if you had 3 extra minutes to add on to the end of it? Well, aside from all this that we just talked about, reducing's better than nothing. So if you can achieve it, do meatless Mondays, or try to do vegan meals for breakfast or something like that. Do you think it could be more harmful to show this idea where you're kind of relaxing? You're not relaxing on your stance, but you're willing to say something about reduction? Or do you think the idea of the acceptance of reduction makes the message look bad, and it would be better to not say it at all?
Hmm. Yeah, I'm starting to think. I mean, still, if I had these 3 more minutes, I don't think that's what I'm gonna talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I think it sounds a little more inconsistent when we
Mm-hmm.
take into consideration the probable urgency I've talked with prior to that. Because again, I don't think there's any uh, urgency if you're telling somebody to reduce.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, when I have these talks, they're coming from a place of me uh, talking about why animals should have rights, and that's a little more heated, I would say.
Mm.
It's I'm trying to imagine this talk because I haven't had it,
Mm-hmm.
but it definitely feels like I would sound inconsistent if I would do that.
Gotcha. You're not alone. Other people think that. I personally don't think it sounds inconsistent. But that's just because it happens to be my opinion. Like my opinion is that nobody should eat animals, and if somebody is going to continue to eat animals, and I can't stop them, that if I convince them to eat half the amount, I would think that's good. I would think that that is a good outcome is going to come from that, and I wouldn't think that I would seem inconsistent because I still feel the same that nobody should eat it. But if they're going to cut it in half, but I see it. I understand. I understand why you feel the way you do, and I could be wrong actually. Even though I don't think it's inconsistent, bringing it up could actually be harmful, and I just don't. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong that not bringing it up is harmful, but yeah, we I guess we can't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Well, and what if you? I think we look at it at different scales. What if you had a group of 10 family members? There's 10 siblings. Their parents got really busy. There's 10 siblings, and they all eat meat. If you convince one of those 10 to become vegan, is that much different than if you had one person that you convince to become 10% vegan? You know, like
You mean 10 people to become 10% vegan?
no,
No.
I don't. That's usually what's being said. But what I mean is, if I could convince a person, it's probably better if it's something like like three, where we eat 3 meals a day. If I could convince somebody that wasn't going to go vegan, to at least have every breakfast be vegan, um, then is that type of convincing to reduce much different than if I had 3 people and I convinced one of the three to go vegan? Because I'm convincing a group of 3 to reduce by a third. And if I convince one person to reduce by a third, when we try to convince people to become vegan, we're trying to convince the population to reduce one, one at a time, kind of.
So I guess in this situation, if I was to uh, try to convince them to not eat animal products in one of their meals, I guess I would give practical reasons for why they could uh, for each one of the meals why they could have it vegan,
Hmm.
and then I guess if they decide to go vegan, that's good. If they
Hmm.
decide to swap one of their meals, regardless of which one it is, then that's not as good, but it's also a
Hmm.
win.
Yeah.
And I guess that would be the approach I would take.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it's a much larger audience, like if I'm talking, let's say, to the entire world,
Hmm.
then I wouldn't bring something like this up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's a lot to think about. It's very interesting, and I think the more we have conversations, the more we shape our stances, and so that's good. But yeah, I gotta hop off here now. And yeah, hopefully we can figure out the chart soon because I really
Yeah,
I
hopefully
like
my
the chart.
laptop can figure it out because it's
Yeah.
still I can't even close it.
Oh, gotcha.
This is
Yeah,
just
you probably just have to power down the laptop
yeah.
or
I'll
something.
restart it.
Well, because yeah, when we did it not recorded last time and not live, it worked perfectly. So it's just one of those things. Life gives you lemons sometimes,
Yeah,
and
actually, this laptop has done this twice, and both of the times were when I had to present something to people.
oh
All the other times, it's working perfectly fine for
yeah,
much heavier things as well than um, an Excel spreadsheet.
yeah. But I'm definitely looking forward to breaking these down with you and helping add all the elements on the side and thinking all these things over. So, anyways, you have a good one, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, same. Goodbye.
All right, take care.